Hi, thanks so much for allowing me to be here before you today. On 9/11, I was actually here in D.C. I was pursuing a graduate degree. After you finish your law degree, if you're really nerdy, you want to get another specialization degree in international human rights law over here at American University. And let me get to my slide. And I was staying in Arlington, and because the area Arlington I'm in was dangerous, I kept the faceplate to my radio in my backpack. And so when I got into my car to drive into an externship I had in D.C. on the morning of 9/11, I didn't have my faceplate on my radio. And so immediately I get into my car and I see a police car flying by. And the police car went by so fast that he hit the police officer hit the meridian, the divider in the road, backed straight up and went straight. And I thought, that's strange, must be an emergency. I'm going to keep going to D.C. because, frankly, I was late for my externship. And I get into D.C. and I can see that people just look a bit off. They're looking at their phones very quickly. They're sort of looking at their phones as if they're trying to use it. But I was late, and the building had changed for my externship at a place called the World Organization Against Torture. And so I go into the first building and I say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, but is the World Organization Against Torture here?" And somebody immediately says, pointing at me, "Watch out for that guy. You're the concierge. You need to make sure he's okay." Now, I'm from New Jersey. I've got an attitude. And depending on my mood, I'll either start trouble or I won't. So I brushed it off because I was late. You can tell I'm from New Jersey from my accent. Is that why you're laughing? So I went to the next building. I said, "Is the World Organization Against Torture here?" And the gentleman said, "Yes, but the World Trade Center has been attacked. The Pentagon has been attacked. We've been told by a Secret Service, since the building was close to the White House, to evacuate the building." Now, right away, I knew that I actually had to get out of D.C. and get back home to New Jersey. Growing up during the Iran hostage crisis, my pop would be told to go back to Iran. And during the first war in the Persian Gulf, I would get crank calls at college saying, "Go back to Iraq." And then after the Oklahoma City bombing, before folks found out it was McVeigh who had done it, a law school colleague had joked, "Your folks are going to catch a lot of heck for what happened in Oklahoma City." After the first World Trade Center attack in 1993, a house of worship, a Sikh house of worship in Glen Rock, New Jersey, that I attended growing up, was defaced. So I pretty much knew what was going to happen, and so my car was literally parked north on Connecticut Avenue, and I literally drove straight to New Jersey. The scene was chaotic in downtown D.C. Cell phones were not working. I knew why. About an hour and a half out of D.C., my cell phone was working, and I had probably the worst conversation of my life with my mother. My mom called, and she said to me, "Are you okay?" "Yes, Mom, all right, you're talking to me." "Do you have your bandana in the car?" I said, "I do." She said, "Put it on." I said, "Mom, I'm not going to put it on." She said, "Please put it on." I said, "Mom, I'm not going to put it on." For a Sikh to take off their turban, since it's an external signifier of our internal commitment to be just and loving in everything we do, to take off our turbans, literally like trying to take off our head. It is who we are. It represents our values of justice and love for all of humanity. And I, as an American, was not going to take off my turban because I was not going to let the terrorists win that day. And so my fiancée at the time called. She also asked me to take off my turban. And I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to drive home. I'll be okay. And by the time I got back to New York, to Jersey, it was about 2:30, so it took a while to get back. And we started receiving the first reports of hate crimes in Richmond Hill, Queens, where there's a big Sikh community. The Sikh house of worship there had already been defaced. a worshiper who had gone to pray for the victims of the attacks in the city, was brutally beaten with baseball bats. 60-year-old plus man was hospitalized. 2 kids who I knew growing up who had been shot with paintballs by people. So we knew what was going to happen, and so with that, I actually turned my head and never went back to my graduate law degree program, and ended up co-founding the Sikh Coalition, which is the nation's largest Sikh civil rights organization. The work is tough. It's tough. Society is figuring out the intersection between our expression of our faith and the law. And the law is not nearly where it needs to be when it comes to protecting the rights of our community. But I gained a lot of inspiration starting this work when a gentleman named Ronaldo Rivera at the Justice Department, their Community Relations Service, he said to me, you know, Amar, anything worth fighting for in your life is something that you're not going to actually realize in your lifetime. And over time, I've really begun to understand the meaning of this. We look at our 41st president, whether you like him or you don't like him, the man is literally standing on the top of a pyramid. He's standing on the top of a pyramid. And at the bottom of that pyramid are the first slaves, Harriet Tubman at the Underground Railroad, Frederick Douglass, who started the first abolitionist newspaper, the North Star, who said, you know what, we want freedom. And then at the next level of the pyramid are those folks in the antebellum South who resisted a segregation as best they could. And on the next level are people like W.E. Du Bois, who founded the NAACP in 1909 and said in an organized way, we're going to start addressing our dignity as human beings in this country. And at the next level is Rosa Parks, who in 1955 said, you know what, I'm not going to sit on the back of the bus. And at the next level are the people who marched with her and fought for the rights that people like me now enjoy. And then the next level are people like Jesse Jackson, who said, you know what, maybe a black man can be president in this country. And then right at the top of that pyramid is the 41st president. But it was literally centuries of struggle, of people who would never see that moment that made it possible. And so that resonated with me, this idea that there's a real beauty in fighting for something that you might not necessarily see in your lifetime. When I sort of got into this work farther, in 2008, the Sikh community, because we have an epidemic of bullying in our schools, basically over 70% of the kids in our schools, according to reports that we've taken, suffer bigoted bullying in schools. And the community started marching in the streets in 2008 in New York City, in Richmond Hill, and said, we need a regulation that will define the problem, will have a reporting period by which it must be investigated, will have the appropriate means of addressing it. There'll be a report back to parents. There'll be tracking of the phenomenon so that we can better address it. And what I told the folks who were marching in the streets for a chancellor's regulation in New York City to address school bullying was, you know, in the 60s, my guess is that nobody in the South could have imagined that a person with a turban on their head would be invoking the rights that they fought for. And my guess is that you cannot imagine the people who are going to be invoking the protections that you just are fighting for so that 1.1 million school students in New York City are protected from bias-based bullying. So the struggle for justice is very, very, very long, as we can see here. And those are pictures of those marchers. You know, I wanted to end my talk by showing you pictures of my 2 boys. On the top left is Nishan, and at the bottom is my older son, Azad. Azad's name means freedom, and Nishan's is identity. Given my background and my sort of experience as a Sikh and as an American, these words have a tremendous amount of meaning to both me and my wife. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest, as a parent, I worry. because I know that the chances are more likely than not that my son, both of them, will face violence and harassment in school, just like I did growing up. I wonder about how they're going to be able to endure it, whether they're going to be able to endure it and be able to still stand up and feel dignified and free. And I hope that one day, I feel like I've failed in some way, that I haven't been able to create an environment in this country where they're going to be safe from this. But I want them to know, and other kids to know, and other communities to know that are enduring discrimination, that are on the side of the world's sort of have-nots, so to speak, that the arc of the universe, as Dr. King loved to quote, really does bend towards justice. That they can, if they put their mind to it, create real change. That they can create real change now, and that they can create change that is part of a longer historical process that they might not see in their lifetime, but is truly, truly possible if they put their mind to it. Let me give you a few examples. Just tomorrow, for the first time, it might not be a big deal to most communities, but for the Sikh community, it means a lot. There's going to be a briefing at the White House. Over 50 leaders, selected leaders from around the country, are going to be briefed on civil rights issues that matter to our community: racial and religious profiling, school bullying, and workplace discrimination. It might not seem much to most. It's not a change in policy. It's not a change in law, but it's a start. It means that the community is being recognized, and we're getting there. That the folks who tomorrow are going to make history for the first time by being in the White House and representing our community, they are part of that process of change that might happen in their lifetimes, or it just might not, but that's okay, because they're part of the process. Similarly, last week, the New York City Metropolitan Transportation Authority, right after 9/11, they told members of our community, if you want to wear your turbans, you're going to have to brand your turbans with our logo, or you're going to have to work in the back. Now, it took us 7 years to litigate that case, and last week, the case was settled, and the MTA completely capitulated and recognized the bigoted nature of forcing Sikhs, and only Sikhs and Muslims, to brand their headdress as a condition of working out in public view. It takes a long time. You will enjoy victories in your lifetime, but be aware that the truly great things you're going to do are going to happen after your lifetime. And be aware that that is part of, as a human being humble and understanding what real change takes and what is necessary to create the change that people remember throughout their lifetime. So with that, I thank you.